Hello everybody and welcome back to another World Cup review. Today I've forgotten which day it is, to be honest, in the World Cup, but I'm reviewing the games of Argentina versus USA, Wales versus Fiji and Scotland versus Russia. So let's get straight into it. So the first game I am reviewing is Argentina versus the States. Now, this one, Argentina's last game of the tournament, of course, they were knocked out and unable to qualify against England a couple of days ago. And they bounced back. I think we saw the side of them which was upset, almost a side that probably we should have seen against England, because they weren't good against England, but in this game they were on point. They were very good in this game, and it makes you think about if they would have played that way against England or in the first half against France, would they be in this situation? But you know, they aren't, and it's a great way to bow out, because they did play good rugby and used the forwards well, used the backs well. It was just an overall, all-round decent performance. For the States, again, they didn't do too badly. They managed to get 17 points on the scoreboard, which is decent for them. 2 tries as well. They were there or thereabouts in the first half. They were close to them. Their defence was not that good, but their defence hasn't really been that good this tournament anyway. It's been an area which has been their weak point in this tournament, and that's why so many scores are put against them, because their defence just hasn't been that good. Their attack, much better. It was much better, much more potent. Of course, they scored 2 tries, and it was just overall a much better performance. I think it was almost on equal terms of their performance against the French, but I think the difference is that Argentina were just much better on the day, and it was shown. The scoreboard, I think, tells the story. The Argentinians dominated in that second half, and they ran away with it in the end. And I don't know whether fatigue came into it with the States. I'm guessing it probably did, because they were defending quite a bit. But the good thing about the US is when they had the ball, they were trying to use it. They were trying to get to places, and for the first time in this tournament, I think their attack was starting to work. It was starting to click through the gears, but it was just unfortunate that they were playing an almost angered Argentinian side who got knocked out in the group stages for the first time in a while. Actually, I don't think they've been knocked out in the group stages for quite a while, and they were semi-finalists 4 years ago. So yeah, it's just timing that they've faced a really, really fired up Argentinian squad who want to fire back after being knocked out, and that's exactly what the Argentinians did. They fired back, managed to get 44 points, which is the highest amount of points they've got in this World Cup so far, and they didn't turn off in this game. I don't think they turned off. In the other 3 games, they did turn off. They had points where they weren't brilliant. That first half against France, an example. Second half against Tonga, another example. The second half against England, another example. They've had these points where they've switched off and they've just almost stopped playing, and not usually the Argentinian side that we see, but I think they did play the full 80 at full pelt, and it was a decent performance from the Argentinians. And I can just sit here and think, why didn't they play like that for the rest of this tournament? They might have got somewhere. Yes, they were playing against the US, but I do think the US put a stern fight up, and the Argentinians rose to that and played very well. And yeah, they might not be in this situation if they would have had a better first half against France, or not have got that red card against England. But things don't go your way sometimes, and they didn't in this World Cup for Argentina. But I think they put all their wrongs right in the US game. But with US, of course, they've still got one more game. They've still got to play Tonga That is going to be a very good game. I'm looking forward to that one because it's a battle of the two teams who were never going to make it into the quarters, let's be honest, in this group. And it's their time to show the world who deserves to get, this sounds bad, but who deserves to get 4th place in the group. And yeah, it's going to be a very entertaining game. The US can go in there with their heads high because they've gradually grown during the tournament, so they're probably going to be reaching their peak before the Tonga game, so it's going to be very entertaining to watch, and we'll see how they get on in that last game when they play Tonga. Of course, a 44-17 loss to Argentina is never going to help, but I do think they'll go into it with their heads held high because they played well, and we'll see what happens when they play Tonga. So the second game I'm reviewing is Scotland versus Russia. Now this one, Russia's last game of the tournament and Scotland's penultimate game of the tournament. But with the way the weather's been going at the moment, it could well be their last. Fingers crossed that it's not though. Anyway, back onto the review, and well, there's not really much to say about this one. Scotland beating Russia 61 points to 0. Russia yet again with no points on the scoreboard, but difference to the Ireland one is they really didn't deserve any points on the scoreboard. I know that sounds bad, but they didn't create enough. They weren't as good as they have been, but you can give them leeway a bit. They've had such a good tournament that it's gonna come back and bite them sooner rather than later because of that compressed schedule they have. They would have never had that ever before, apart from the last World Cup they were in, which was 2011. So they would always struggle. I was surprised at how they didn't struggle earlier in the tournament with the schedule they had. But yeah, I think they really struggled in this game, and they just didn't. They didn't look like they were there. They didn't look like they were up for it. They looked very tired, and they looked almost out of it from the first whistle, and so many mistakes as well. Scotland's third try, based off a Russian line out 5 metres out from their own try line, and it was just easily intercepted. There were just so many simple mistakes from the Russians, even early on in the game, that just allowed the Scots to run away. And once they were multiple tries ahead, I don't think the Russians really showed anything after that. They didn't show any fight, they didn't show any vigour, and the Scots just ended up running away with it in the end. But no complaints for Scotland though, because they were brilliant. Russia may not have been at their best, they may not have played as well as they have in their other 3 games, but Scotland were very good, and they're building up confidence. And it's going to be very upsetting if the game against Japan doesn't go ahead due to the typhoon that's incoming. But because they are building confidence, they played decent against Samoa. It wasn't brilliant, but they played alright. They didn't concede any points. And then they took that and pretty much another changed squad, and they've played even better, and they didn't concede again. So that's 2 games now where they haven't conceded, and that must bring so much confidence for the Scots. And not only did they not concede in those 2 games, but they've also scored a whole load of points, and they've scored a whole load of tries with it. And in the Samoa game there were 2 penalty tries in the 4 tries they scored, but in this one I can't actually remember how many tries they scored. That's how many they scored, and they were just amazing, to be honest, Scotland. The likes of Adam Hastings were brilliant. The Scottish scrum half who got a hat-trick, his name's escaped me so far at this point, but he got hat-trick. Just that half-back pairing was absolutely brilliant, and I think these Scottish players are starting to put their name forward for if the Japan game does go ahead. They're putting their name forward for that game, and it's going to be so interesting to see because Scotland are building up confidence, they're building up their chances, they're going very well at the moment, and of course Japan are as well. So if that game gets called off, it's going to be such a devastating news to hear, because it would have been a cracker. But as I said at the start, fingers crossed. But with this game between Scotland and Russia, there's really not much to say about it. Scotland, they dominated Russia. They looked just really tired. But last game for Russia, they shouldn't really look at this one. They should look at the rest of the tournament and think, we have played really well. Yes, we've only scored one try, but they have played really well. They've given so much heart, so much fight, and it's good to see from a team like Russia, who didn't really get in the way they would have wanted to get in the first place, but they showed themselves and they did really well. For Scotland, of course, they've got one more game to try and get themselves into that quarter-final slot, so we'll see if that goes ahead, and they are building up a lot of confidence. So if they do play Japan, then that is going to be a very entertaining game to watch, and I am definitely looking forward to it. The last game reviewing of this video is Wales versus Fiji, and what a cracker this was. Brilliant game, and well, we were almost on a brink of another shock. And again, it was on the brink for Fiji. They've almost caused a shock against Australia earlier on in the tournament. This time, they nearly did it to Wales. But they didn't, unfortunately. But with the start they made, who could have thought that Wales could have come back from that? Because they just didn't look in it. Fiji scored two relatively easy tries. One from Tuisova, one from Muri Valu. Both down Josh Adams' channel, who didn't have the best defensive display in the world. They scored two easy tries in the opening 10 minutes, and it looked very bad for Wales. And then they got a yellow card from Ken Owens, which also looked bad. And it was looking like it was going to be a horrible day at the office for Wales, and it looked like 2007 was going to come and bite them on the back again. With Fiji beating them back in 2007, it looked like it was going to happen again. And with the start, as I said, that Fiji made, who could have doubted that? They were brilliant. They came out of the blocks flying, and they shell-shocked the Welsh, and they didn't know what to do. The Welsh defence couldn't handle it, and they were all over them. They were just all over them like a bad rash, and it's classic Fiji. I think they really like pulling off shocks. They really enjoy it. They seem to excel against big teams. They seem to play so much better. Because we saw against Uruguay, they were nothing like they were against Australia, where they were amazing. They were playing brilliant rugby. But the same thing as in that Australia game, the same thing happened in this Welsh game. They died out towards the end. I do think they survived a little bit. They did go harder throughout the full 80, but in the end, Wales had the edge over him. And Wales, of course, Josh Adams scored a hat-trick in the game. He didn't have the best defensive display, but he had a good attacking display and got a hat-trick. And yeah, for Wales, it wasn't the best performance in the world, but I think their attack was good. We know that Fiji's defence isn't the best, and I think it was just a case of exploiting that and scoring more than they scored and making sure their defence did turn up in that second half, which it did to an extent. It did. The Welsh, of course, they went ahead at half-time. Not too sure if it was deserved with the way Fiji were playing. The Welsh were definitely shocked, but anyway, the Welsh went ahead at half-time, and I think they must have had a big team talk, because the second half was better in terms of defence. They were much more solid, and they were just overall better in their defence, and they were holding out Fiji for a bit longer. Fiji did manage to score a try just after the break, but after that they did start to deteriorate. They were trying to keep in the game. They were keeping in the game, but in the end the Welsh just had it over them, I think, and they did end up getting the bonus point, the Welsh. and they ended up having it over them, and the last couple, like the last 20 minutes was where the Welsh won it. And I think that comeback as well from the Welsh was very good. It shows that they can come back from the brink, they can come back from playing poorly to getting back ahead again, getting back on track, getting the momentum. Because let's face it, Fiji had all that momentum in the first half, all of it, and somehow Wales managed to go ahead at half time. So that's full credit to their fight, and it shows that they still have that winning mentality, even though they had the poor warm-up games beforehand. It shows that they still have that winning mentality, and it's that sort of thing that can help in quarter-final games. But yeah, I think Fiji unlucky not to get anything out of the game again, but you know, they could go home, considering this is their last game. They could go home relatively happy with how they've performed at this World Cup. I mean, the Uruguay game was below par, but Georgia, they were brilliant. Australia, brilliant, just missed out. And Wales, brilliant, and just missed out again. And yeah, just a bit more work on fitness. Maybe more games against Tier 1 nations will help with this. More games against Tier 1 nations, just to push them on a bit, and maybe come the next World Cup in France, they can really push and go for a quarter-final place. If they keep the same sort of team, I'm not too sure whether it's old or young, I'm not too familiar with the Fijian side, but if they can keep them fresh and keep them there for the next 4 years, who knows, we could be in for seeing a Fiji quarter-final appearance. But yeah, for the Welsh though, I think it wasn't the best display, but I've said this in most of the games, Wales did what they needed to do and they got the bonus point. They're pretty much in the quarterfinals now. It's just a case of first or second. Looks like they'll be first if they beat Uruguay in their last game. And yeah, they have that winning mentality. I think they're going well going into the quarterfinals. The Welsh, they're looking good. In terms of an attacking point of view, especially because their attack wasn't very good. Maybe the outgoing of Rob Howley helped with their attack being much better. Who knows? That's talk for another day. But yeah, I think they're going well. I think they've got this winning mentality because they survived that Australia scare and they survived this Fiji scare. So I think they're going well and they've got mentality going into the quarterfinals, and it'll be interesting to see. I expect them to have a wholesale load of changes for the Uruguay game, so it'll be interesting to see the squad depth they have. But yeah, they got what they needed at the end of this Fiji game. As close as it was, and as much as they may not have wanted a close game like this, they had one, and it shows the mentality in the end, and they did come through, and they did well enough to win it. On a Fiji point of view, as I said, they'll go home happy because they really excelled against the big teams, against Australia and Wales, and I hope in the next tournament in France in 4 years' time that they will be even closer, maybe in the quarterfinal spots. So they are my reviews of those games. Thank you everyone for watching. Put in the comments down below what you think about this typhoon that's happening at the moment. I'm recording this at the time that the games of England and France and Italy and New Zealand have been cancelled. That's the time I'm recording this. So put in the comments down below what you think on those cancellations and what you think World Rugby should do. And also about the Scotland-Japan game, what you think that should happen with that one. I'll be interested to know your thoughts. But yeah, thank you all for watching. Please like, please subscribe, and I'll see you in a bit.